Hey, how are you today?
I'm well. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. It's 11 a.m., right? And you're in LA now?
It is.
Yeah.
How about for you, gentlemen?
I'm from Missouri right now, calling to you. So it's 1 p.m. And what time is it in Russia?
Oh, now it's 9 p.m.
9 p.m. Yeah.
All right. These are good hours all
Right.
around.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Yeah. So my name is Yefim. I'm a teacher at Missouri State University and a screenwriter. And my colleague is Eugene. He's a journalist from Russia. We used to talk with Sean Murray about your work on Call of Duty soundtracks. And so most of the questions has Eugene. And so not to freak you out, sometimes he's going to speak in Russian and I will help you to translate. It's okay.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Afim?
Yes, correct. Nice to meet you, Jane.
Nice to meet you too. I'm maybe worst English speaker in the world, so sometimes I will speak in Russian. Мы уже общались с композитором Шоном Мюррей, и он нам рассказал свою историю о том, как попал в проект True Crime. Я так понимаю, вы тоже там участвовали, и как это получилось? Как вы туда попали?
Yeah, so Eugene, he says that we already talked with Sean Murray about, he told us about his story, how he got into Call of Duty project. First, he started with True Crime, New York City, and he met sound designer there who led him actually and asked him to work on Call of Duty. And what about you? How did you get into this project? And specifically, could you tell us about the work on opera for true crime?
Absolutely. So I met Sean through a neighbor of his in 2004 when I was in an acting class. And I'm a musician and singer first and foremost, but it was recommended to me that I go in an acting class because, when I came to Los Angeles, I don't come from a family that's in the business. And there's a lot of people, wonderful people that you work with in Los Angeles and movies and music, and they have, parents who are directors or producers or composers. And so I'm the first one that ever pursued a music career in my family. So when I came to Los Angeles, I really didn't know anyone. So I graduated from college as a musician, and I met a girl named Ellie, and she was Sean's neighbor, and she asked about my work as a musician, and I shared with her that I was a classical musician and sung a lot of classical music in Italian, French, and German. And she said, "Oh, my neighbor's a composer, and he's looking for an opera singer for this video game." And I said, "Oh, great." She said, "Well, do you have any music that I could play for him?" And I said, "Sure." I had a compact disc at the time, CD. And so I sent him, I think he listened to a French aria that I had sung, and he gave me a call and said, I love your voice, and can you come have an interview about this video game? So in True Crime New York City, I played an opera singer, and he wrote an aria for me. And we had a great time working together, and the game did really well. And then the next time that we worked together on a video game was Call of Duty World at War, which I think it came out in 2008. And Sean called me and said, I'm working on this video game, and I'm looking for, I want you to do it with me, but we're going to be singing in German, and how do you feel about that? And I said, well, I feel fine. I love singing in German, and I was excited to hear about it. So, Sean brought me in, and he wrote this beautiful music, and we improvised certain sections as we do, and it was beautiful. And then, Call of Duty Black Ops came along, which is probably one of the biggest. I mean, you guys might know more than me, but at the time it grossed a lot, did really, really well when it came out. And this time the budget was huge. We were going to be recording live at Warner Brothers. It was a really, really tremendous opportunity and so much fun. Full score, all live musicians. So again, Sean said, I want to do this with you, and this is what I'm thinking. and we got to work. So he wrote the songs that he wanted me to sing, and then we improvised other sections. And yeah, we went over to Warner Brothers a couple days when the orchestra was recording, which was so thrilling, because as you know, those days are decreasing. So much of music for video games and film, especially the last 5 or 7 years, is all computer generated with stock libraries and things. So at the time, it was really special. And yeah, Sean and I have been working regularly on video games and TV movies and multiple projects for almost 20 years now. So that's the long answer.
No, that's a wonderful answer. Wonderful answer. Thank you for the story. I would say you were living in a very creative neighborhood.
Oh yes, it is. I love living. I don't have anything to compare it to. I've worked in New York, and I was singing in Germany in 2007. But I've lived in Los Angeles. Let's see, I'm 43. I moved here when I moved here when I was 18. I've been in the business a while. For a lot of people leave because it can be hard and it kind of ebbs and flows. But I can't imagine doing anything else. So.
Вот вопрос такой. Вот вы пели на немецком, а какие еще языки знаете?
The question has, you were singing in German. What other languages do you know?
Well, this is a little embarrassing. I sing in a lot of languages, but I don't speak any conversationally. I mean, I studied Spanish in school, but I always learned other languages in the context of song or poetry. So if I needed to sing in French, for instance, I always needed help with my diction, but I really wanted to do it well. And in fact, when Sean and I were working on Call of Duty 5, we had a couple questions about German. And this was before, this was 20 years ago. Now you can get your phone out and say, how do you say this? All of that technology was just beginning. So we actually called his dad, and his dad, may he rest in peace, just passed away, Don Murray, very, very famous actor. So we called Don, and we were asking him to clarify some of the German that Sean had written to make sure, everything was pronounced correctly and written grammatically correct, etc. So, yes, I do not speak any languages fluently in conversation, but as a musician, that's part of the job. I also sing in Hebrew. I've been singing in Hebrew for about 10 years. I do some professional work in different synagogues, and I love singing in Hebrew as well. But that's something that I'm asked to do professionally a lot, singing in Hebrew.
Thank you. There's speaking of languages, we're gonna continue this one. So your voice, we can hear your voice in soundtrack for Call of Duty, and it's very difficult to figure out what do you sing. It's very difficult to figure out what's the words in a Russian theme. Sean Murray said us that there are some gibberish words they were reading for, like they kind of sound like Slavic speech, but not actually Slavic speech. What was it about? Could you clarify?
You might. Okay, this is funny too because forgive me. We recorded this 15 years ago, so forgive me if I would have to think back. I think at the time, because, unless I know something that Sean doesn't, I don't think Sean speaks any Russian. There were times that he said, this is the feeling I'm going for. I'm going for, fear, suspense. Let's improvise. And then he'd get a word or two and improvise. And it probably, I'm embarrassed because to you guys it must be, it might have sounded absolutely ridiculous, but at the time I think it was, if there was a frenzied moment, it was meant to be improvised and not necessarily literal. Does that make sense? If I recall at the time.
Kind of.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. We don't understand what you're talking about. Russian is very easy. It's one of the easiest languages.
Really?
No, it's not. Just that's because we're native speakers. That's why I'm saying this. It's not. It's definitely not.
What was it like learning for you all? I'm curious. In Russia, I feel like in America, there's English, but lots of people speak Spanish, especially in California here. It's very, very bilingual. But in Russia, do you all learn English? Is that something that just sort of is common and taught, that you all learn English?
When I was a student, at school, we were learning English. It was about 2-3 lessons a week. Yeah, 45 minutes a day. But it's common. It's very common. It's like...
Мы изучали английский язык в школах, потом еще в университете. У нас это основной, так сказать, иностранный язык был, который мы изучали.
Yeah, it's first in school, then at university. Yeah, it's the most, I guess, the general international language we used to learn. I guess that's like the whole world now, so it's...
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, we're going on with the questions. If we...
Sure.
Eugene, what is the next question you would like to ask?
Насколько мне известно, саундтрек к World at War записывали в Польше. Как вы там находились во время записи, и как оно вообще все ощущалось там? Потому что город был под оккупацией немцев в 40-х годах.
So the question is, if we know correct, the soundtrack for Call of Duty World at War was recorded in Europe, in Prague. Have you been there during the recording, and how was it? What was the feeling? Because if you know right, the building you were recording the sound was occupied by Nazis during the Second World War. Did it somehow help you? If it's the right.
Oh, good question. So this is interesting. I did not go to Prague for my part of the recording, and I knew that Sean was there, and I knew that it was significant where they were recording. And when I did my part, because this was about 20 years ago. I'm trying to remember. I think Sean went to Prague first, and then I recorded all my bits after in his studio in Los Angeles. But this is a very good question, because there is a difference, and maybe it's because I've been doing this almost 25 years. There is a difference when you have live musicians recording in a special studio or concert hall or anything like that. There's a difference in the feeling. There's a difference auditorily, I think, than what you have today, which is much more, can be, with all the computer-generated virtual instruments, lacking a certain spirit and soul quality. So I think it did affect my experience singing when I was in Sean's studio, hearing the musicians. Another thing about Sean, he will always budget for live musicians. Even TV movie with lower budget TV movies, he'll always bring in a cellist or a violinist. I'm a flutist as well, so I'm a pianist and flutist as well, so I've done live music recordings for him too, not singing. But he believes there's a difference as well with the live musicians, where you're recording. And so that was significant. I wasn't in Prague, but I did hear and feel a difference for sure when I was recording my part.
Yeah, thank you. That's wonderful answer.
А саундтрек Call of Duty Black Ops уже был записан на студии Warner, насколько я знаю. И там есть любопытный трек Beheaded, в котором также сложно разобрать слова. Можете ли о нем рассказать подробнее?
Yeah, so the soundtrack for Black Ops was recorded on the Warner Studio, right? And
yes.
Right. And there is also like a curious track there. It calls Beheaded, but difficult to figure out what you actually sing there. So the question, what do you sing there?
Oh gosh, yeah, I know that I have the soundtrack on my computer. I remember. Sean had me. Now this is interesting, and you know if you produce music that I'll record something as the singer, and then in post-production, what Sean does with it may oftentimes be something very different from the original track. He can double the vocal. He can clip it. Lots of different things can happen, because even when I heard the final recording, I heard my voice coming from, it felt like multiple different directions and layered, and I would also sing my own harmonies. To answer your question, I don't recall, if I had my score in front of me, I don't recall what the original text was, but I think that what Sean was doing, if I recall, and we can pull it up and listen to it, or not, but I think what Sean was doing with the vocals whenever I would come in is to layer and create a more textured feeling of what was going on in the game, or musically. Even if it didn't make sense literally with the words. Does that make sense?
It does.
I heard my voice oftentimes textured through. And a lot of that, I have to go through and listen to the soundtrack, but everything that we did was utilized. He was very resourceful and creative with the use of everything. And it was oftentimes very different than what it was on the page when I got my music. If that makes sense.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Speaking of this work for Call of Duty World at War and Black Ops, you mentioned that there was a different budget, and Black Ops was huge, and you actually was recording on studio work. Was it different for you? What was the feeling working for this project? Which one did you like the most?
Oh my gosh, probably Black Ops. Yes, it was, because I think that there is people that work in this business, I find, and that when you get to work at a certain level, no matter who you're related to, if you don't produce a certain product as a musician or writer, you won't get a job. So, people complain about, nepotism and everything, but if I have 4 sons, and if one of them were a talented musician and worked hard, I would love to work with my kid and give them an opportunity. To answer your question, when we worked on Black Ops at Warner Brothers, you're working with musicians that are at the top of their field. It's such an honor, and there's an excitement that everybody there has. It's special. Everybody there has a huge body of work and a journey as a musician or a writer or a producer in production to be there in that moment. So it is like a celebration. Every day was like a celebration, because we're showing up to do what we love. And those opportunities don't come all the time. You can even ask Sean. There aren't a lot of things that film live at Warner Brothers or Fox anymore. Sometimes there'll be the budget for it, but because of the advancements in CGI, a lot of the time it's all done remotely and pieced together. And so even at the time, even in 2010, it was so special. Everybody was happy. People were taking pictures, and everybody is so good at what they do. The finest musicians in the world, truly, that orchestral musicians who can sight read beautifully. And Tim Simonek, who was the conductor, conducting, he could make, adjustment just spontaneously in the moment. And you just have musicians that can roll spontaneously with the punches. I can send you some pictures if you want from one of the days filming. They're with my old camera, but I can send you some if you want to see Sean and me in the studio, and Emily Bernstein and some other people that were there. But to answer your question, it was like a celebration every day. We were there.
That's great. It sounds like you actually enjoying working on this project.
I did a lot. It was really wonderful.
Yeah, we would definitely
send us the lyrics and post photos from that time, from those times.
Yeah, I'll have to dig them up. You know, the camera, what was it, 2010, I had one of those, maybe it was one of the first digital cameras. Right. It was not the greatest camera, but I'll just send you the pictures. The phone cameras and photo quality now are fantastic. Not so much then, but I'll send you a few. I can email or on Instagram send them to you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Еще хотелось бы спросить, Шон Мюррей сказал нам, что он часто со своей дочерью играет в World of Tanks and Forza. Играете ли вы в видеоигры?
Yeah. Sean Murray told that he actually played video games with his daughter, like Forza and World of Tanks. Do you play video games?
I do not. I think it's the big joke that I have 4 sons that love video games. I have never really been into video games, and my friend who has Call of Duty finally said, Jane, you really ought to see what this is about. So I watched a friend play it, and I thought, oh, this is really cool. I am interested in history, so the fact that these were set in historical times was always very interesting to me. But no, I never have been a video game person, and so many people are. It's huge, so yeah, that's true. I've watched people play Call of Duty, but I haven't played it myself.
Женя, по-моему, 200 миллионов просмотров на русской теме, да, было?
Да.
Yeah, I mean, it's glad that you had this chance to see how, like, at least other people playing and listening to your music. We would like to mention, like, Russian theme. I think it's about 200 million views on YouTube.
Yeah,
it's a big thing.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. Yes.
How is it received? Oh no, go ahead. What was do you remember when Black Ops came out? Obviously, it was an international release, but was it very popular in Russia when it came out?
Yes,
How was the game received?
Переведи вопрос, пожалуйста.
Как игру приняли в России Black Ops?
Мне сложно сказать, потому что когда эта игра вышла, я еще только заканчивал школу. И среди некоторых моих одноклассников, конечно же, был некоторый ажиотаж.
Then the game released, it was he was like finishing the school, but most of his classmates were like very excited to play the game. I personally could say that I guess Call of Duty World at War was big because you can actually play for the Russian campaign. It's not very often that you can like play for Russian campaigning, being someone from Russia. Yeah, so it was exciting, especially for me. Okay.
Хотелось бы поговорить о ваших текущих проектах. Насколько мне известно, вы вместе с Шоном Мюрреем работали с Александром Невским. Как это случилось? Я не мог не спросить этого.
Yeah, so he mentions there is a Russian actor. This is a big name, I mean, for us. And Alexander Nevsky. So, yes. Right. So the question is, we know, for example, the question is how you ended up working with Sean Murray, worked with Alexander Nevsky. How did you start working with him?
Yeah, good question. This town, Los Angeles, it's a small town. So what I find is and again, I've been here working almost 25 years because I started when I was young, about 18. When you meet one person and you work with them, a few times, people tend to want to work together for years. So through Sean, and I've worked with other composers as well and producers and bands and things like that. But through Sean, every project that we've collaborated on, we have met, I've inadvertently met the people that he's working on. So Joe, who's the director of the Nevsky films, I think there's Assault on Rio Bravo. I think they've done a few films now. And I sang on
Maximum Impact.
Yes, I know. It's weird. Sometimes I forget because there's so many things over the years that I forget which ones that I've sung on. But yes, it is really exciting that with each project, I'll get to meet most of the time the actor or the director at some point on the film. And so, yes, without Sean in the movie, I would not have otherwise met him or had that connection. But in this town, another example is the film director, Clint Eastwood or Martin Scorsese. He works with the same crew, the same actors. I mean, he has for almost Scorsese, maybe 20 years, 30 years. You see that a lot here. You see it in the music business too. That people know who they want to work with, and at a certain point, you don't audition. The only time that I auditioned for Sean was for True Crime in New York City when he heard my CD and he wanted to hear my voice. Every time we collaborated after that, he would say, I want you to do this with me. And so, again, this is my long-winded answer, but yes, in this town, when you have a good working relationship with directors or composers, usually, in my experience, you continue your working relationship and you meet everybody on the future projects. So.
Тут есть еще интересный факт. У Александра Невского выходил фильм «Максимум Импакт», в котором также вы заявлены как вокальный артист. И когда мы записывали интервью с Шоном Мюрреем, я как раз сидел в том здании, в котором снимали этот фильм, потому что я там работаю каждый день. Вот.
Yeah, it's like the curious fact. You said like LA is a small town, right? I guess the world is small because, for example, this movie Maximum Impact, some of the scenes were filming in the building where Evgeny was actually working. So it's kind of...
Really?
Yeah.
Come on, really?
Yeah, can you imagine this? I mean, how small is the world? The world is.
It's a small world. That's the thing. I believe that's true. Absolutely. That's... Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we have a question. What are your future plans? Do you plan to work in movies? Maybe continue to work on some video games as you worked before?
Mm-hmm. Good question. I have been the last 2 years writing music. So a band, they're not, I mean, they have a fan base around the world, but there's a rock band, a cinematic rock band called Globus. And the founder of Globus has a record company here, Yoav Goren, called Imperativa Records. And when around the time I was doing the Call of Duty games, business was very different. And singers like me were called in to record live vocal tracks for trailers. Now, more often than not, all of the movie trailers that you hear are sample libraries. I mean, not all the time, but back 15 years ago, there was still a lot of live sessions that I was doing for trailers, like Pirates of the Caribbean and Spider-Man 2 and Defiance. And so I headlined a big concert here called Trailer Music Live. And it had a rock band and a full orchestra. And I sang live all of the different trailers. And they had the projection of all the movies on a huge screen. It was really cool. So this is 15 years ago. And that band, Globus, did some touring. They performed at Wembley, did some different work. I would come in and do sessions for them. Fast forward to 2 years ago, I was in a very serious car accident here. I guess it was 3 years ago. I was hit by a reckless driver about a mile from our home, and I was almost killed. And I made a full recovery, but at the time, I had broken my clavicle, all the bones on the left side of my body, and I was sitting around going through a very difficult time, so I started writing. This is how the songwriting started. And I started writing songs. And when I got better, I played some of the songs for the producers of the record company at Imperativa for Globus. And long story short, they chose one of my songs, The River, said, we'd love for this, we want to record this and produce a song and put it on the album. So I had my first song professionally recorded 2 years ago for the album. And I since have starred in a short film that they're making, and I can release more details. More details will be released. Nothing's been released about it. In January 2025, I was starring in a musical film with the band Globus. With musicians were flown in from around the world. Our other lead is a guy named Shim Moore from Australia. So we created this film. This is going to be coming out in 2025. And so to answer your question, what I'm looking forward to is songwriting, writing my own music, having an album one day of my own music. I love singing at patriotic events. I sing the national anthem a lot in Los Angeles. I sang at the LA Marathon for, it's like 25,000 people. A lot of different, I've asked to do a lot of live performance work, which I love. So yes, I love to work in movies, sing my own music, continue writing. Yeah, those are probably my top 3 goals for the next future time.
It's wonderful. I mean, I think I saw something on Instagram about you singing national anthem baseball stadium. Was it a baseball stadium?
Yeah, it was at Dodgers. Yeah. And it's fun. You know, those are, again, I love, even though I'm not a runner, I love singing at large events that celebrate artistry, sports. I mean, again, some of the finest athletes from around the world are there, and so it's wonderful to sing, and the news is there. They're highly publicized events. It's a great honor. And of course, I'm excited about the Olympics coming to Los Angeles. So I'm thinking, you know, I have to tell you this because I watched Celine Dion sing the opening ceremony, and I was so moved. You know, I love Celine Dion, and so I thought, well, I'm not as famous as Celine Dion, but you know, I thought, to sing at the opening ceremonies, 2028 Los Angeles, that's the highest dream right there. So I'll declare it. Yes, I'd love to sing at the Olympics opening ceremony.
That's a wonderful dream, I think. Yeah. And it's LA, I guess.
LA, yeah.
Yeah. Есть вопросы у тебя еще?
Да. Я видел на IMDb, что у вас последний фильм, где вы как актриса, выходил в 2014 году. Есть ли планы двигаться в этом направлении дальше?
Yeah. So he take a look at your IMDb page, and it says you were playing, like acting, an actress in 2013. Do you have plans to maybe continue to go this way, or?
Yeah, you know, this is interesting. I have worked as an actress. I love acting. Before I came to Los Angeles, my first professional jobs were in musical theater, and it's called, you know, equity. Equity productions are when you're paid. Community theater is when you do it and you're volunteering. But at the age of 12, I started to work professionally as a paid singer and actor. And I did it for play. I didn't really study. And as I said, in college, when I took that acting class, I had done some acting, but I always was really fortunate. I would be cast in plays, and I had never taken acting lessons. It was just intuitive for me. So, yes, I did a co-star on The Newsroom. I had a small part in Her. I'm trying to think what I did. And I loved it. But in a way, my first passion has always been music, and I would love to do some acting, but music is number one. The film that I just completed that was a musical film, I loved because I got to sing as well. So yeah, I love the acting, but my favorite is the singing and acting for sure too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Женя, есть вопросы?
У меня, пожалуй, все. У меня больше нечего спросить.
If you have a few more minutes, may I ask you the question too? So I'm gonna graduate soon, and my degree is film degree, like screenwriting, etc. I guess my question is, if you would be like a beginning singer who wants to, in your case, right, who wants to break into industry, would you consider LA as the city to move in and start in 2024? Would it be maybe another city or?
Oh, this is a good question. And I have an answer for you. I think that even in the last 2 years, singers and songwriters and artists are able to have a remote studio almost anywhere, like a good remote studio, and record their own music. And this is something that 20 years ago was not the case. The record companies were the gatekeepers. If you wanted to have a certain level of music or a certain level of distribution, you needed to have a record deal. And we still have record deals. But to answer your question, yes, at a certain point, there are people that live in Los Angeles or New York or in Europe that have certain connections that can help a young artist. But if I had any advice to somebody coming or that wanted to be a singer or a songwriter today, I would say the most important thing is to remain authentic to who you are. When I came here 25 years ago, it was a different time, but there was this energy of like, oh, I want to be as pretty as so-and-so, and I want to have the voice as beautiful as someone. And that's good, because it's good to have people that we are inspired by. But now I think that I would encourage like young women or men, like develop your own authenticity, your own uniqueness. What do you have to say that is meaningful? Like not to copy other people's work, but really like what do you have to say in your music, and to be very bold in your uniqueness, because there's too many people. There's like millions of songs uploaded on Spotify now. Like there's so much music everywhere, and artists need to have their own sound that makes them stand apart. Really think about like any singer. I was mentioning Celine Dion, Lady Gaga, or even Ray Charles. Take any singer that's iconic and you can recognize their voice immediately. So developing own unique sound, your own unique stamp on the music. If you're doing that, you, as far as I'm concerned, you can be in any city in the world, but it's the type of music that you're creating that is the main thing. So I hope that answers your question.
It answers. It makes a lot of sense. I guess it's related to the whole industry now, just unique. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of copycats now. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I sound a little jaded. I love music. I love musicians, but there is a lot of that sort of copycat, or let's just say generic sounding music, especially in pop. I think that it's most exciting when you hear music that is something we haven't heard before, is a unique message or a unique sound that we haven't heard before. Like we want to see the vulnerable side and the inside. For women in particular, I think it's nice that the beauty standards are changing. For a long time, it was like, oh, you need to weigh 115 pounds, or your hair needs to look a certain way, or your skin needs to look a certain way. And now the business is changing. We're embracing people just being who they are more. It's going that direction, which I think is exciting.
It is. That's a wonderful advice. Thank you. Женя, что, все?
Да, у меня больше нет.
I like how you smile when you speak Russian. It's like, I hope it's not awkward.
I know. I feel like, but I love hearing you speak Russian. It's a beautiful language. I love it. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, the all languages are beautiful. Yeah, thank you. We have we are the questions. Just thank you so much for giving the interview, for your time. It was a wonderful conversation.
Oh, I enjoyed it too.
Yeah. So do you have any questions to us?
I do. About the Call of Duty franchise, specifically in Russia, I was even looking the last day. I thought, how many Call of Duty games are there now? About 13? How many are there? 13, 14, 15?
Whoa.
Где-то так, да.
Maybe?
It's all about 30, yes.
Yeah. So is the fan, if you know, is there it seems like there's a very loyal fan base to this franchise. Would you say that fan base is growing with the younger generations, or is it a fan base that is a particular age and area? What's the fan base like?
That's the wonderful question. Ты понял вопрос?
Да. У меня есть на него ответ. И мне кажется, что именно в России новые части Call of Duty не привлекают новую аудиторию. Они уже когда-то это сделали, и, в принципе, эти игры взрослеют вместе с теми, кто играл в них 10-15 лет назад.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying that the new parts of Call of Duty doesn't attract a new audience. They build a fan base with the old Call of Duties, especially like the one we're talking about, that Black Ops 2, World at War, this series. And the age is growing with the games now. So it's...
Yeah, that's true. That's exciting. I'm so excited to read what you wrote and to hear Sean's part of the interview too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as I said, Eugene will send you a link so you can see.
Of course, and it was so nice meeting you both. You're so welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure. Have a beautiful night, afternoon, and
right. Have a beautiful day.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.